Hello everybody, my name is Elena. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm doing a long-awaited video. Not for you guys. I don't know if you even knew that this video was going on, but for me. And yes, I'm sick. So you're unfortunately gonna have to listen to me talk with a really stuffy nose. So I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. But today we are doing a little discussion video on ACOTAR because I decided to read it for the first time. Well, no, actually, no, that's a lie. Well, I did read it for the first time, but the first book I had, tried to read, 4 other times, and I couldn't do it. And then this summer, I was like, I'm gonna give it another shot. If it doesn't work out, I'm literally gonna stop trying. And I read the first book in a day. That's why there's no reading vlogs of it, because I didn't actually think I was gonna like it. And I think that might have set me up for success, because I didn't have any expectations. I just went into it and I read it. And I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And this is now one of my favorite series that I've read this year. And definitely that I've read ever. So I need to discuss it, and we're gonna go book by book, and this video will have spoilers. But, this first little section of the video will be spoiler free. I will give a warning before we start with the spoiler section and dive into every single book separately. But this first section is going to be spoiler free. You know it's serious when I bring out the little Daisy notebook. I have everything written down in here that we need to talk about. The first 3 books, ACOTAR, ACOMAF, and ACOWAR, I gave all 3 books 4.75 stars. They all get the same rating. I loved every single book the same, except if I had to pick a favorite, it would be ACOWAR. I know that's controversial. I know the beloved book in the series is ACOMAF. I get it. If I had to pick a favorite out of these 3, which are Rhys and Feyre's kind of trilogy, I would pick ACOWAR. I knew a lot of spoilers about the series, but this book was so incredibly fun to me. And I know a lot of people find it boring because it has kind of world building and stuff like that. I found it really fun. I loved all 3 of these books, and I thoroughly enjoyed them, and I read them in record time. A Court of Frost and Starlight, I gave 4.25 stars. A lot of people I know say to skip this book. I say don't skip it. If you like the characters, this will give you more background on them, and I think it ties together A Court of Silver Flames with ACOWAR really well, so I don't think you should skip this. I actually don't think you can. Maybe you could, but this gave me so much insight on a lot of characters that I loved, because in the first 3 books, you only get Feyre's point of view, except for a chapter or 2 where you get Rhys's point of view. But this has not all the characters' point of views, but a lot of new characters get you get their perspective. It's really good. I also highly recommend you read it, and it's supposed to be really cozy, but it also shattered my heart. We'll get into it later. And then, ladies and gentlemen, my favorite book in the series, A Court of Silver Flames. I adore this book. I gave it 5 stars. Me and this book were like this, okay? I adore it. I love everything about it. My favorite character is Nesta. This confirmed it. There's nothing I can tell you in this spoiler-free section other than this book cannot be skipped. I know a lot of people don't want to read it. I know you don't like Nesta. Listen to me. Read this book. It's so good. It's so well done. The mental health representation in this book did it for me. As a psychology student, I like looking at those aspects in books. This was really good. And I loved the commentary. I loved everything about it. The friendships, the romance, everything. I love it. This one is my favorite. My favorite character, like I said, is Nesta. I really like Gwyn, by the way. She shows up in A Court of Silver Flames. And I really like Feyre. I love Elaine as well, actually. I like the sisters. And of course, Rhys is always a good choice. I love all of them. I think out of the Bat Boys, my favorite is Cassian. I know a lot of people thirst over Azriel, and I get it. I'm just not that crazy about him, although he is, really hot, so. I mean, I can't ignore it, but it's just, I think Cassian is kind of more my thing, and I loved him. That's basically all I can say in the spoiler-free section, so if you're planning on reading the books, stop here. Come back when you've read it and we can discuss the series together. And if you read the series or if you don't care about spoilers, stick around, let's discuss. I will go book by book in detail and discuss favorite scenes and maybe analyze some things here and there. It's gonna be a grand old time. and it's probably gonna take me like 3 hours to film. Great, let's go. One of the things that I found were really fun about ACOTAR was the fact that Farah was figuring everything out as we were, like as the readers were figuring stuff out, she also was, and I thought that was so fun. I thought it was so well done. It made the book so much more interesting, and I especially loved the fact that she literally ignored every single thing every character told her, but not in an annoying way. I guess it would be annoying to other people, but it was so funny to me. Like, people would be like, oh, don't do that, and she'll be like, got it, and then go do it. It was so funny because it taught her things. I loved Lucian and Farah's friendship. They were the only things keeping me like going through this book in terms of characters. And Alice, I loved Alice. She was so fun. I loved that she wasn't like too prominent, but she was just there in the series, and she was like so witty and grumpy and bantery. I loved her very much. I knew everything about Tamlin. I knew that he was an ass, and I hate Tamlin, by the way. And I knew everything. I knew Rhys was supposed to be her mate. I knew a lot of spoilers, but I had a great time reading the books regardless. I don't think I would have liked Tamlin even if I didn't know what was going to happen later. Tamlin is not one of those characters that I would be obsessed with in a book. Because in ACOTAR, objectively, he's great. Like, he's a great guy in ACOTAR. But it's not what I gravitate towards, and he probably would have been like, oh, he's a fine character. It's just not something that I adore. So I don't think I ever would have been obsessed with him. And basically what I'm trying to say is I don't feel robbed about like the fact that I knew that he was gonna fuck up royally later. That didn't really make a difference. I knew the way that Rhys was gonna show up in ACOTAR. I knew about the scene where like, there you are, I've been looking for you. I absolutely knew about that, and I was really excited to get to it. He arrived, and there he was, and it was so good, and I was already so obsessed with him. And I loved the explanation that we got for that scene in the other books. More about that later. But I thought that was like a really good scene to introduce his character. I was also under the impression that Rhys wasn't really gonna be in the first book, and he ended up being in it more than I thought, because like right at the end, like he's really present, and Tamlin kind of isn't. I think it would have been too abrupt if it hadn't been done for the other books. So I'm glad that she decided to put him in more like near the end, and then kind of tie it in all together in the other books. I thought it was really well done. As a Nesta stan, I loved everything Nesta in all of the books. Specifically, chapter 30 in ACOTAR on page 265. Nesta, who had shrouded the loss of our mother, then our downfall, in icy rage and bitterness, because the anger had been a lifeline, the cruelty a release. But she had cared. Beneath it, she had cared, and perhaps loved more fiercely than I could comprehend, more deeply and loyally. Is it concerning for me if I say she's a comfort character? Like, what does that say about my psyche and my mental health and where I'm at mentally? Like, what does that say? You know what? Let's not get into it. That's a problem for a different time. I love Nesta, is basically what I'm trying to say. And that whole thing where, like, she actually tried to get to Farah and she got to the wall and couldn't find a way in. And the whole time you think that she, like, doesn't care, and she literally risked her life that much to try and find her sister. It just had me in shambles. I love that woman. The part of the book with the trials. Heart was pounding. I was sweating. The only thing that I have a complaint about, and that's why it's kind of not 5 stars, is because the riddle that Amarantha gives Farah, immediately I knew that it was love. I knew that the answer was love. And it was kind of annoying that she didn't figure it out. But then again, I kind of glossed over it. Didn't really care. I was having a great time. But I thought it was, like, really predictable. But I loved the whole trials thing, and I loved how Farah could figure everything out. And even though she did have help for a lot of them, I loved everything about it. And that's when, like, Rhys is more present, so that made it even better. It was just chef's kiss. Speaking of the trials, a Farah and Rhys scene that I really love. Chapter 40, page 366. Good girl, now walk away, turn your head, good. Walk towards the door, keep your chin high, let the crowd part, one step after another. He was just so present and so in tune with her emotions, and he just has my heart. Also, Tamlin was acting really fucking weird in the last half of the book, like with the trials. Like, even if I didn't know that Tamlin was gonna be an ass, that would have been really fishy. That would have been the reddest flag ever. It would have been redder than the cover of this book. And this book is really red. Rhys points it out as well, I think, in one scene. He's like, oh, he had, like, a chance to get you out from under this mountain, and he chose it to like kiss you because he got jealous. And I was like, you know what, Reese? Slay. Because absolutely you're correct. Why was he acting like that? What was the reason? That is it for ACOTAR. We're moving on to ACOMAF because I don't want this video to be 3 hours long. I absolutely despised Ianthe. I am so sorry. Every time I saw her name, I broke out in hives. I hate that woman. I cannot stand her. And speaking of people I can't stand, Tamlin. Oh, that little bitch. Oh, I'm getting so heated. Hold on. He is so stubborn. He is so... Listen, I get it. Okay? I understand that it in some fucked up way in his head that he loved Feyre. But you don't do that to someone that you love. And he just so very bluntly just ignored every single trauma that she had under the mountain. Suddenly it was all about him, even though he made it look like it was about her. And he kept like locking her up, and he was like, why don't you just paint? She doesn't want to just paint. I was so thankful every time that Rhys showed up. He was literally a saving grace. I was like, I cannot stand Tamlin. And what hurt most is that he rules over the Spring Court, which is my favorite season. And I would love to be in the Spring Court. But no, Tamlin's there. So I don't want to go. When they had that like realization that if they wanted like the Mortal Queens or whatever they're called to like be on their side against the King of Hybern, they needed to show them Valaris because Valaris was sacred and Amarantha didn't know about it and stuff like that. I was so protective. I was like, not Valaris, not the City of Starlight. Absolutely not on my watch. I hated every single part of that plan. I hated every single second of it. I was like, you leave Valaris alone. Please, Valaris is like a place that I would absolutely love to visit, and I think I wouldn't want to leave. Obviously, I can't because it's a book place, but it's so like comfy and cozy and safe, and I love Valaris is basically what I'm trying to say. Finally, we got introduced to the Inner Circle, and I love every single one of them, okay? Amren in particular had like a special place in my heart because I love characters like that. I love characters that are very strong and like bordering on mean and cruel, but still care, but don't really show it that outwardly. I knew that A Court of Silver Flames was about Nesta and Cassian, and every single crumb that we got of them in all of the previous books, I was eating it up. I was so happy about it. I was literally losing my mind, and I couldn't wait to get to A Court of Silver Flames. So that scene where they're under the mountain, right? This is like a flashback to ACOTAR, where Feyre is like sobbing and like losing her mind and is breaking down, and then she hears this music. Rhys was sending the music over from Valaris, and then when they're walking around, she recognizes it. That scene, nothing could have prepared me for it. I like sobbed reading that scene. It was so well written. It was so genius. It was so good. I love that scene. That's probably one of my favorite Faye Sand scenes. It was so good. I can't talk about this book without mentioning chapter 34, page 337. To the people who look at the stars and wish, to the stars who listen and the dreams that are answered. That's probably my favorite quote out of the whole series, and I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. It's a very beloved quote in the fandom. Another quote I really love is in chapter 48, page 466. He said softly, "I love it when you look at me like that." The purr in his voice heated my blood. Like what? Like my power isn't something to run from. Like you see me. Rhys was like, okay, I think Rhys's trauma needed a lot more like development, and we needed to see more of it, and I think that was kind of hard to do because we didn't really have his point of view. But that's kind of also why none of the like Faye Sand books are 5 stars, because we didn't really look at his trauma, and I kind of wanted to because he went through so much under the mountain and he sacrificed so much for his people and for Valaris and for his court, and I feel like we needed more of that, and I needed, well, no more of that. He is traumatized enough. I meant we needed to see more of his perspective. I hate Tamlin. I already said it, and I'm probably going to say it again when I talk about the other books, don't you worry. I hate him, but what I do like is the mentality that Feyre has towards him, and I like that she understands that, okay, maybe there was something there, but it's not for me anymore, and we're different people. And I think this explains it really well. This is chapter 48, page 467. Maybe a small part of me might always care for him, but Amarantha had broken us both, or broken me so that who he was and what I was now no longer fit. And I could let that go. I could accept that. Maybe it would be hard for a while, but maybe it would get better. I knew Farah and Reese were mates from TikTok, but the surreal killed me. That's like one of my favorite characters in the series, by the way. Like, it's the fact that he loved the gossip so much. He always had the tea. A scene that really stuck out to me was after Farah figures out that they're mates because the surreal says it and stuff like that, and she gets mad and she's in the cabin and she's painting. She's talking to Moore and she's painting eyes on the walls. Chapter 52, page 511. I finished her eyes, honey brown to Amaranth's quicksilver, but almost in answer, Moore declared, paint Asriel's next to mine and Cassian's next to Amaranth's. I lifted my brows. Moore gave an innocent smile. So we can all watch over you. I adore that scene, and I couldn't tell you why. It's just, there's something about it, the sentiment of it, it's just, I love them. Another little paragraph that I think explains Nesta's character really well, because that's what really inspired me to do this video. I just really wanted to analyze Nesta's character. In chapter 58, page 559, feeling. I think Nesta feels everything, sees too much, sees and feels it all, and she burns with it. Keeping that wall up helps from being overwhelmed, from caring too greatly. I adore this woman, and I want to give her a hug, and she would have my head for it. I don't care. I would risk it for a hug. The cauldron scene, let's talk about the elephant in the room, traumatized me. Absolutely traumatizing. I knew that Reese and Farah's bond wasn't breaking. I knew that part. What I didn't know was that they were going to turn the sisters. Nesta and Elaine did as soon as they were brought into the room, I had to put the book down. I was like, I'm sorry, absolutely not. What the fuck is going on? And then Lucian and Tamlin show up, and it's just this whole entire mess. Cassian's wings getting ripped to shreds? Absolutely not. Absolutely. That was like a jab to the heart. Like, multiple jabs to the heart. His wings, the way that they looked, that's what my heart felt like. And probably looked like if you could peer in and see it in that moment, it would be in shambles. Because I was in shambles. That hurt. That hurt so much. I didn't know how I was going to feel about the ending where Farah goes with Tamlin. And spoiler alert for the next part of this video, I actually really liked it. But that was the ending of this book. And like I said, I was a bit iffy on it. And I can't tell you why I didn't give this book 5 stars. It just didn't give me that feeling. I think I needed something else, and I don't know what it was. Maybe I'll figure it out when I reread the book, or maybe I'll up the rating when I reread the book, but I thoroughly enjoyed this. ACOWAR. One thing that I loved about this book was how schemy Farah was in the beginning when she goes back to the Spring Court, because like I said, I was scared that I wasn't going to like it, and it ended up being so fun. I just loved the way that she figured everything out, and she was like, okay, I'm ending your shit. I cannot explain to you why this scene is so funny to me, but when Lucian and Farah sent the bog after those creepy twins from Hybern or wherever the fuck they were from, don't care. When they send the bog after them, the scene with Tamlin where he's like, oh my god, you just ruined a potential alliance, whatever. And then Farah's like, good, they were shit people. And Tamlin goes, you sent the bog after them. I was dying laughing reading that scene, and I can't explain to you why it's so funny. I don't think anyone finds it as funny as I do, but the fact that he was so stressed about it, and Farah was like, good. All I'm hearing is that I slayed, and yes, you did. I adore that scene where Lucian and Farah are trying to going through all the courts to try to get to the Night Court, and then Cassian and Azriel arrive to save them from the Autumn Court, from Lucian's family. Chapter 13, page 142. I met those laughing, fierce hazel eyes. Cassian's smile softened. Hello, Farah. My throat tightened to the point of pain, and I threw my arms around his neck, embracing him tightly. I missed you too, Cassian murmured, squeezing me. I adore that scene. Okay, I love Farah and Cassian's friendship. They're literally twin flames. I love them. They are platonic soulmates. I don't care what you say. Okay, so when Lucian comes to the Night Court, he starts realizing that everything that he's been told about the Night Court is wrong. And in part, that is the Night Court's fault because they had that reputation and they were keeping it up and stuff like that. And it's not entirely Lucian's fault that he thought that way, but he just realizes that he's been manipulated his whole life. And he has that really touching conversation with Feyre that I love. Chapter 15, page 150. And you love him, and he truly loves you. Lucian dragged a hand through his red hair. And all these people I've spent my centuries hating, even fearing, they're your family. I hadn't realized I was the villain in your narrative, Lucian breathed. You weren't, not entirely. And that shows that Feyre understands that he didn't mean to do what he did, but she still can't forgive him because of what she went through, and that's fine. And they kind of rekindle later on in the book. But I really liked that she was acknowledging everything. There's another elephant in the room in this book, and that is the meeting with the High Lords. Jesus Christ. I feel like that scene went on for so long, and it absolutely needed to be that long because the drama ate it up. I loved every single part of that. I'm gonna go back to ACOTAR very briefly just to read you this one line. You think I've got nothing better to do with my time than come up with elaborate ways to humiliate you? That is chapter 13, page 118 in ACOTAR. And that's what Tamlin says to Feyre. Fast forward to ACOWAR, chapter 44, page 418. Tamlin only angled his head at Rhys. When you fuck her, have you ever noticed that little noise she makes right before she climaxes? So what was that thing you were saying about, like, finding elaborate ways to humiliate her and how you'd never do it? Enough about Tamlin. I've talked enough about him. Honestly, he doesn't deserve the spotlight. You know who does? Helion, however you pronounce his name. I'm obsessed with him. I can't explain to you the obsession that I have with him, and he'd probably be really delighted that I was obsessed with him, because that's just the kind of guy he is. Sorry, the kind of male he is. It's just, I love him, adore him, obsessed with him. He's so funny. Listen, before I move on, I'm a Lucian and Elaine stan. Azriel's supposed to be with Gwen. That's canon in my head, and I think it's gonna be canon in the series. I don't care if you're pissy about it. I love Lucian and Elaine, and Lucian deserves to be happy. What I really like in these books is that, and I've noticed this in Sarah J. Maas's other books, specifically in Throne of Glass, I like that she doesn't take away very feminine, stereotypically feminine features and things and hobbies from the female characters, and I like that she lets them have it, but still have their own strength, in order to show that you don't have to, like, give up those things in order to be, like, this strong person or whatever. Is my camera crooked? My phone fell, and I don't know if this is how it was set up before, and I don't know where I was. Oh yes, we were talking about femininity in the books. I really liked that the female characters kept their femininity and still were able to be strong in their own way. And this is a really good scene that portrays that. It's the scene where Moore is kind of masking them not to look like Faye because they need to go back to, like, their world and talk to Grayson, I think his name was, like, Elaine's fiance, whatever. Chapter 51, page 487. You're still lovely, Morris said a bit gently. Elaine offered half a smile. I suppose that war makes wanting things like that unimportant. Moore was quiet for a heartbeat. Perhaps, but you shouldn't let war steal it from you regardless. Again, the Nessian crumbs, like a drug to me. Would you like to know what scene I was absolutely not prepared for? The Suriel dying. Chapter 60, page 539. Feyre Archeron, the Suriel said again, gazing at the leafy canopy, the sky peeking through it. A painful inhale. A request. I leaned close. Anything. Another rattling breath. Leave this world a better place than how you found it. And as its chest rose and stopped altogether, as its breath escaped in one sigh, I understood why the Suriel had come to help me, again and again, not just for kindness, but because it was a dreamer, and it was the heart of a dreamer that had ceased beating inside of that monstrous chest. And then they hit you with their dad showing up, with 3 ships named after the Archeron sisters. Cue me sobbing again. Chapter 71, page 634. He named his 3 personal ships after them, Draken said with a smile, and there, sailing at the front, I beheld the names of those ships, the Feyre, the Elaine, and leading the charge against Hybern, flying over the waves, unyielding and without an ounce of fear, the Nesta, with my father, our father, at the helm. This was the peak of my sobbing when I was reading this book in particular. It was when Amren sacrifices herself in order to make them win the battle. I didn't know any spoilers about her coming back, so I thought she was actually dead and was never gonna come back. And I was sobbing because, like I said, I had a soft spot for Amren, and I just was not okay. Chapter 75, pages 657 to 659. I watched them for so many eons, humans in my world. There were humans too. And I watched them love and hate, wage senseless war and find precious peace, watch them build lives, build worlds. I was never allowed such things. I had not been designed that way and had not been ordered to do so, so I watched. And that day I came here, it was the first selfish thing I had done. For a long, long while, I thought it was a punishment for disobeying my father's orders, for wanting. I thought this world was some hell he'd locked me into for disobedience. Amren swallowed. But I wonder if my father knew, if he saw how much I watched them love and hate and build, and opened that rip in the world not as punishment, but as a gift. Her eyes gleamed. For it had been a gift. This time with you, with all of you, it had been a gift. And that's not it. And I'm about to cry. And I really don't want to cry because I put mascara on just for this video. Tell the High Lord, she said softly, to leave out a cup for me. Nuh-uh. Sobbing, tears streaming, was not okay. Page 659. She paused. The thing that was inside Amren paused, looked at us, at the battlefield, at all of our friends, our family still fighting on it, as if to say, I remember you. And then she was gone. Traumatized me. Absolutely traumatized me, and I was so happy when she came back. And that was when I cried the most. A Court of Frost and Starlight. Like I said, I know a lot of people skip this book. I don't think you should skip it. It gives you a lot of background on the characters. You get kind of different POVs, and it's still kind of cozy, but it did make me sob. This has the most devastating passage I think I've read in a book ever, and I will read it out to you and try not to sob while doing it. But we'll get to that later. I just wanted to say that I really loved this book. The devastating passage. Chapter 3, page 28. Yes, it's 28 pages in. It's when Cassian is talking about his mom. His mother had suffered every moment of her too short life. It only grew worse after she'd given birth to him, especially in the years after he'd been taken away. And when he had been strong enough, old enough to come back to look for her, she was gone. They would refuse to tell him where she was buried, if they'd given her that honor, or if they'd thrown her body into the icy chasm to rot. He still didn't know, even with their final rasping breaths, those who made sure she never knew happiness had refused to tell him, and spat in his face and told him every awful thing they'd done to her. He'd wanted to bury her in Valaris, somewhere full of light and warmth, full of kind people, far away from these mountains. Cassian scanned the snow-covered pass. His memories here were murky, mud and cold and 2 small fires, and he could recall a lilting, soft voice and gentle, slender hands. It was all he had of her. That is the most devastating thing I've ever read, and I'm gonna cry again. Please don't cry. That, dinner scene was so funny with all of the characters, made me, laugh out loud. The way the Bat Boys are literal children that have a snowball fight every, what's it called? What's their Christmas called? Whatever. Christmas in their world. Every single year they have a snowball fight and they keep track of who won. The fact that she only got 1 present, they invited her, they just didn't get her anything. That, broke my heart. Everyone deserves a present, and she got only 1, and that was from Elaine. That is all I have to say for this book because it is a novella and it's pretty short, but please go read it. I already said that this book means everything to me, and I liked that we got to see the characters from a different point of view. Because I think I saw someone on TikTok mention it, or maybe it was YouTube. I'm so sorry, I don't know who said it. I like that we got to see Rhys from a different point of view because he's kind of put on a pedestal in the other books just because of the characters. And that's fine, it's perfectly fine, but we get a different side of him in this book because it's from Nesta's point of view. The intervention that was staged for Nesta. I understand that they needed to intervene, and I perfectly agree with that. I hate the way that they did it. I hated the way that it was done. I feel like it could have been done a lot better, and I felt like none of them had sympathy. And I understand that it's hard to be sympathetic in those kinds of moments with people like Nesta and characters like Nesta, but it was, everyone deserves compassion. And I don't think that was done very well on their part. I think Farah did a really good job in this book. She did have her moments, but everyone does. You can't hold it against her. But I think everyone else was a bit too cruel. That's just my personal opinion on it. The way that you start to understand that Nesta wanted connections with other people and wanted to be close to people, but she didn't want them to be used to hurt her. Nesta's inner monologue is something that was really hard to read and so devastating to read, because you know that that's not what the characters think of her. They just can't, they just don't show it in a way for her to understand, and she doesn't want to get it because she ultimately hates herself and she needs to forgive herself first. And I liked how that was done in the books as well. Chapter 6, page 78. I am worthless and I am nothing, Nesta nearly said. She wasn't sure why the words bubbled up, pressing on her lips to voice them. I hate everything that I am, and I am so tired. I am tired of wanting to be anywhere but in my own head. The whole metaphor with the stairs and that she like gradually got better and better at them, and how that was like connected to her mental health. I loved that. I love anything metaphorical in books. The Valkyries are my girls, I would just like to say. Like, I love the Inner Circle and Farah's whole friend group. But Nesta, Gwyn, and Emery, let's go with Emery. They are like my babies, they're my girls, and the fact that they have like a book club and friendship bracelets, please let me in. I have a thing for the way that things are described or characters are described, and I really liked this description that Nesta gives of Cassian. Chapter 9, page 122. His hazel eyes were bright with pleading in this morning sun, the wind dancing in his dark hair, like he was made from these mountains, crafted from wind and stone. He was so beautiful, not in the way that Azriel and Rhys were beautiful, but in an uncut way, savage and unrelenting. So good. Immediately, I know what he looks like, I know the vibe, I get it. Cassian, this whole book was just there for Nesta, and I couldn't want anything more. Like, she really needed someone to be there for her and see all those like dark sides of her. And because she does have dark sides, like she's a morally gray character, and she needed someone to see all of it and accept her, and he did exactly that, and I loved him for it. I adore him for it. And like the way he realized that she didn't want to train in front of anyone else because she doesn't like doing things that she's not good at, and she knows that she won't immediately be good at training. That is me. I felt so seen. Because I also wouldn't want to embarrass myself in front of anyone else. And then he figures it out, and then they train in privacy. Do you know what instantly made me adore Nesta? The fact that she wanted the other priestesses to learn how to fight because she knew that it would help them. And the way that Cassian was so supportive and it meant everything to her. Well, they mean everything to me. There was a lot of ignorance towards Nesta in like a bunch of scenes in this book. And I know that were done on purpose. But it made me so angry, and I will fight anyone on this because she did not deserve some of the things that were said and done. And I understand that everything gets wrapped up in the end, and I'm not holding grudges, but I need to talk about it. Chapter 17, pages 103 to 105. Nesta is speaking to Elaine in this scene. I sat by your side for weeks, Nesta said flatly. Weeks while you wasted away refusing food and water, while you appeared to hope you'd just wither and die. Elaine flinched, but Nesta couldn't stop the words from pouring out. No one suggested you either shape up or be shipped back to the human lands. You can't argue with that. I'm sorry, that's literally what happened. You cannot argue with it. And then continuing on, Elaine says, you're angry with me. Fine then, she could be direct too, Nesta shot back. For packing my things while Rhys and Farah told me I'm a worthless pile of shit? Yes. Elaine crossed her arms, said calmly and sadly, Farah warned me this might happen. The words struck Nesta like a slap. They spoken of her, her behavior, her attitude. Elaine and Farah, that was the new status of things, the bond Elaine had chosen. And I understand that there's parts of this where Nesta is just angry that Elaine is with Farah instead of with her. I get that, but there is truth in it. All I'm going to say is, verbatim, someone's quick off the mark. Outsold. It was so funny. Moving on. I knew Farah was pregnant. I knew Rhys was overprotected because of it. I knew the whole thing with the shield. I even knew like the birth at the end, what was gonna happen, that Nesta was gonna save Farah and Rhys and the baby. I didn't know like very many details about it, but I knew like the concept. The way Nesta pretended to have trouble with her right hook and practicing in the library so Cassian would come in and like kind of coach her through it in the library in front of the priestesses because they didn't want to sign, just so she could show them that Whatever they're imagining is not what's happening. Like, it's not terrifying and scary, and like he's not mean. They just train. That was so genius of her. And then that chapter ends with Gwyn signing her name on the like little list of participants. The friendships mean everything to me in this book. There are so many moments in this book where Nesta is just adoring Cassian in silence, and honestly, that's a very big mood. Chapter 26, page 187. Cassian was good. In his soul, in his warrior's heart, Cassian was good in a way Nesta knew most people were not. In a way she knew she was not and never would be. He was not a warrior who killed on a whim, but a male who carefully considered every life he had to take, who'd defend what he loved until death. We then had Emery joining the training. Loved her. I think she was mentioned in A Court of Frost and Starlight, and I have annotated, like, oh, can we adopt her? We did adopt her. This whole book, Rhys needed to be put in his place. I'm so sorry to all the Rhys stans. That's exactly what Cassian does. Chapter 28, page 306, after Rhys warns Nesta about Gwyn. I noticed the way she tensed, and I know you well, brother. You saw Gwyn and thought the worst of Nesta. She treated her and Emery with kindness. That's what pissed you off? I'm pissed off that you can't seem to believe even one good thing about her. That you refuse to fucking believe one good thing about her. Was it necessary to bait her like that? Regret glimmered in Rhys's eyes. Cassian went on. You're not making it easier. Let her build these bonds and stay the hell out of it. Rhys blinked. I'm sorry. I will. Loved that scene. I thought it was very, very needed, and I like how it was handled. Best quote in this book is Incoming. I think about this quote almost daily, and if I'm not, there is something wrong with me. I've probably been replaced by like a clone. Chapter 31, page 343. His eyes met his. Death watched him, but Death had walked beside him every day of his life, so Cassian stroked his thumb along her palm and said, Hello, Ness. Death walks beside him every day because he's the general of the army, and he's very familiar with death and killing, and he's not afraid of Nesta, and he sees her as a whole, all of her like good sides and bad sides, and he loves all of it, and that's exactly what she needs. And we already talked about this, and it's just, oh, I can't get it out of my head. The scene with Nesta and in the swamp with the mask and that thing in the swamp terrified me. Easily the scariest scene in all the books. I had a qualm with Amren in this book as well, because some of the things that she said were really like, I want to say out of touch. Like, they were like, just don't say those things. I understand why she said it. I understand she was kind of hurt because Nesta was supposed to be her friend. And I know they make up at the end and we'll talk about it, but this just really didn't sit right with me immediately after the swamp scene. Chapter 37, page 377. Only a desperate fool would don that mask, Amren said. She was literally getting sexually assaulted in that swamp by that creature, and the only way she could survive without dying is putting the mask on. Why are you villainizing it? Listen, I love a good mom joke in a book. I constantly think about the one in Six of Crows, and there is one in A Court of Silver Flames, and Cassian's the one that says it. Again, love of my life. Chapter 41, page 426. What are you thinking about? Helion drawled as they approached the shut wooden door. Cassian straightened. He hadn't realized his thoughts had dragged such a scent from him. He grinned. Your mother. I love it. He's so chaotic. I love him so much. This is what kind of inspired me to make this video, this particular scene. When Nesta makes those blades and they're like, I guess, like she put her power in them. And then they have this like meeting where they're like, oh, we shouldn't tell her and she's not supposed to know. And then Cassian's like, no, we need to tell her. And everyone else is like, no, like it's dangerous. And Amren says something like, what if she uses it on us? Girl, please. And then that scene where Nesta figures it out, and then because she figures it out, and then she knows about Feyre and the baby and how she probably like won't survive giving birth to the baby because it has wings and she doesn't have that anatomy to like give birth to a baby with wings. Anyways, I understand that she could have been more compassionate in the way that she said it to Feyre, and that is Nesta's fault, and she apologized for it afterwards. But I just need to talk about that scene because the only reason why she said it, or I guess one of the reasons why that she said it to Feyre, is because they were keeping it from her. The way that they kept the information about the blades from Nesta, and she would have appreciated if they had told her. So she's doing to Farah what she wanted someone to do to her, which is tell her the truth. And I love that Farah understood that. Chapter 47, page 488. Rhysand overreacted. He completely and utterly overreacted. Cassian shook his head, though Farah couldn't see him. I'm sorry you had to learn of it. I'm not. I'm furious with all of you. I understand why you didn't tell me, but I'm furious. Well, we're furious with Nesta. She had the courage to tell me the truth. She told you the truth to hurt you. Perhaps, but she was the only one who said anything. Cassian sighed through his nose. He thought over it. I think she saw the parallel between your situations and in her own way decided to avenge both of you. That's my feeling too. Rhys disagrees. Nesta's breaking point when she was climbing the mountain absolutely ruined me. I don't think I stopped sobbing reading that whole thing. Chapter 50, pages 503 to 507. He came to save me and fought for me, and I let him die with hate in my heart. Hate for him. He died because I didn't stop it. And I was so horrid to him until the very end. I was so horrid to him all my life. And still he somehow loved me. And I didn't deserve it, but he did. And I let him die. I can't undo it. I can't fix it. I can't fix that he's dead. I can't fix what I said to Farah. I can't fix any of the horrible things that I've done. I can't fix me. And she says, I can't bear it. Cassian said quietly, it wasn't your fault. Page 505. I can tell you that I've killed so many people I've lost count, but I remember most of their faces. I can tell you how I hear Eris and Devlon and the others talk, and deep down I still believe that I'm a worthless bastard brute. That it doesn't matter how many siphons I have and how many battles I've won, because I failed the two people dearest to me when it mattered the most. That's Cassian being vulnerable to Nesta, and I just couldn't do it. You don't need to become some impossible ideal. You don't need to be sweet and simpering. You can give everyone the I will slay my enemies look, which is my favorite look, by the way. You can keep that sharpness I like so much, that boldness and fearlessness. I don't want you to ever lose those things to cage yourself in. But I still don't know how to fix myself. There's nothing broken to be fixed, he said fiercely. You're helping yourself, healing the parts of you that hurt too much, and perhaps hurt others too. Remember how I mentioned in the Court of Frost and Starlight that she only got one gift? Well, we have an upgrade, she got 2 gifts. Listen, I understand why the others didn't get her gifts. Okay, I get it. It's, albeit not that deep. But I really liked that Azriel got her a gift because I think they're gonna be great besties in like the next ACOTAR book, whenever that comes out. I love their whole friendship, and the fact that he gave her such a meaningful gift too. I love that the Valkyrie like made friendship bracelets. That was so cute, and the fact that it helped them later with like the blood right, genius. Chapter 60, page 619. A small gift for friends who had become like sisters, a chosen family, like the one Farah had found for herself. Nesta squeezed the charms in her palm, closed her eyes, and said, I wish for us to have the courage to go out into the world when we're ready, but to always be able to find our way back to each other, no matter what. Wynn and Emery cheered at that, and when Nesta opened her eyes, palm unfurling, she could have sworn that the coins glowed faintly. Remember I said that I loved Amren and Nesta's relationship and friendship and everything that entailed, and I know I had my qualms with Amren, and then they make up, and I love the scene where they make up and Nesta just apologizes and all is good in the world, and I loved that scene. Chapter 61, page 632 to 633. Nesta fell to one knee and bowed her head. I am sorry. Amren made a noise of surprise, and Nesta knew the others were watching, but she didn't care. She kept her head lowered and let the words flow from her heart. You gave me kindness and respect and your time, and I treated them like garbage. You told me the truth, and I didn't want to hear it. I was jealous and scared and too proud to admit it, but losing your friendship is a loss I can't endure. And then, page 633. Nesta looked back at her friend. Amren smiled, and her face became as lovely as Cassian's as the stars arching past. Welcome back to the Night Court, Nesta Artron. And I've written down, I'm crying. Same. Again, hi. And then we obviously have the Nyx birth scene, and that was harrowing, but I loved what Nesta did for Farah and Nyx and Rhys. Chapter 77, page 735. You loved me when no one else would. You never stopped, even when I didn't deserve it. You loved me and fought for me, and Nesta looked at Farah's face, death a breath away from claiming it. She didn't stop the tears that ran down her cheeks as she squeezed Farah's slender hand tighter. I love you, Farah. She had never said those words out loud to anyone. I love you, Nesta whispered. I love you. And then later on, I'll give back what I took from you. Just show me how to save them, her and Rhysand and the baby. Rhys, her brother. That's what he was, wasn't he? Her brother who had offered her kindness even when she knew he wanted to throttle her, and she him, and the baby, her nephew. Blood of her blood, she would save him. Save them, even if it took everything. Show me, she pleaded. And in the other books, it said that Rhys only bows to his crown and to Feyre, and then we have that scene where, you know, Feyre's alive, and she tells Nesta, hey, I love you too, and then she hugs Nyx, and they're all good and great, and then we have this scene. Then Rhys fell to his knees and took Nesta's hands in his, pressing his mouth to her fingers. Thank you, he wept, head bowed. Cassian knew it wasn't in gratitude for Rhys's own life that he knelt upon the sacred tattoos inked upon his knees. Nesta dropped to the carpet, lifted Rhys's face into her hands, studied what lay in them. Then she threw her arms around the High Lord of the Night Court and held him tightly. And then lastly, the ending of this book is like one of my favorites. I loved how wholesome it was. Chapter 80, page 751. Her father had died for her, with love in her heart, and Nesta held love in her own heart as she pulled a small carved rose from her pocket and set it upon the gravestone, a permanent marker of the beauty and the good he tried to bring to the world. She found Feyre and Elaine waiting halfway down the hill, Nyx now peacefully dozing in Elaine's arms. Her sisters beamed, beckoning her to join, and Nesta smiled back, her steps light as she hurried down the hill to meet them. That is such a good ending for this book and the characters, and I just love everything about it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to try not to make it too long, but I hope you enjoyed anyways. Like, comment, subscribe if you'd like, and I will see you in my next video. Bye-bye.